If you're hearing this, it means the quarantine failed. Nobody should know what we found drifting between systems. Nobody should know what we woke up. My name is Commander Elias Rourke, Deep Salvage Division, Interstellar Transit Authority. For 12 years, my job was simple in theory and lethal in practice. Chase down dead ships in the gaps between stars, strip them for anything valuable, and tow their corpses back towards civilized space. Objects in deep interstellar drift are usually one of three things: broken, abandoned, or bait. We always prayed for the first two. The call came in while I was halfway through a synthetic meal that tasted like plastic regret. The overhead lights in the mess flickered once, then dimmed to emergency amber as the ship's intercom clicked to life. Command crew to briefing compartment 3. Priority 1, Athena said. Our onboard AI never raised her voice. She did not have to. The phrase, Priority 1, did the work for her. That classification sat above derelict collisions, reactor leaks, even hostile contact. Priority 1 meant someone had stumbled onto something new or something old that had been buried very carefully. I left the tray on the table, appetite evaporating, and jogged down the narrow spine corridor of the Vigilant. There's a particular kind of silence inside a ship when everybody knows something is wrong, but nobody is saying it yet. Conversations cut off as I passed. Eyes flicked to me and away again, like people were afraid that direct contact might drag them into whatever was happening. Briefing compartment 3 was already crowded when I arrived. Captain Yara Dean stood at the far end of the room, her hands resting on the back of a chair, knuckles white. Navigation, science, tactical, engineering, the whole senior staff. The holotable floated between us, a block of deep space emptiness studded with colored icons. At the center of it hung an object. At first, I took it for a long tumbling rock, some overgrown asteroid that had strayed too far from home. It was the size of a city, a stretched spindle with a lumpy silhouette and long ridges along its back. But then the resolution sharpened, and my stomach tightened. It was too symmetrical, too deliberate. The thing had a prow, if you could call it that, a broad end that tapered to a cluster of branching protrusions. It looked like a rib cage caught mid-explosion, frozen in time. Along its length ran grooves and cavities that could have been cargo bays, hangar mouths, or something stranger. What am I looking at? I asked. Object designation DS7413, Yara said. Her voice was steady, but there was a tension there I did not like. Detected 3 days ago by a long-range prospecting array in the Perseus Gap. No active emissions, no drive signature, no comms. It's coasting on inertia between systems. I frowned. Cross-section reads, organic? Science officer Marin Kaito pinched the hollow image, rotating it until a series of internal scans overlaid the model. No clean metallic reflections, no reactor core, just layers upon layers of dense, irregular material. Not metal, Marin said. Not any alloy in our databases. Spectroscopy shows high carbon content, traces of nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus. Density maps suggest fibrous structures and cavities consistent with, well, he hesitated. With something that used to be alive. The word hung there. Used. Explain, Yara said. Marin swallowed. Best models say we're looking at fossilized tissue, bone-like material. The outer hull is heavily mineralized, like petrified wood taken to an absurd extreme. Whatever this thing was, it died a very long time ago. Millions of years at least, maybe more. Adero from Tactical let out a low breath. So it's a corpse, a dead alien, the size of a starship. Athena's avatar shimmered into existence beside the table, a featureless human silhouette made of pale light. She inclined her head slightly, an echo of a nod she had copied from us over the years. Correction, she said. It is a corpse that has been shaped like a starship. These ridges, cavities, and internal chambers follow structural logics optimized for transport and compartmentalization. It is not simply a body, it is a vessel engineered from living tissue. The room went very quiet. Predators sometimes shape their dens to resemble shelter for their prey. That thought arrived in my mind fully formed and unwelcome. Ownership? Yara asked. Any broadcast, beacon, claim? Negative, Athena said. No ID, no transponder, no known signatures. So it's salvage, Adero said. A legal ghost. We log the find, attach our claim, and take a closer look. That is what they pay us for. I watched the slow rotation of the thing. The ridges on its back cast long shadows, like vertebrae. Closest patrol? I asked. We are, Yara said. The authority wants eyes on this yesterday. They rerouted us as soon as the array ping came in. We'll intercept DS-7413 in 14 hours. She looked around the room, meeting each of our gazes in turn. I know what you're thinking. We've all heard the stories, but we are not some back-channel scavenger outfit. We are deep salvage, operating under authority law. If this object has value, it belongs to the people who can do something with it. Science, tech, whatever it offers, we bring it home. Assuming it doesn't bite, Adero muttered. Everyone heard him. Nobody laughed. Yara continued. Standard boarding procedures. Rourke, you'll lead the entry team. Kaito, you're on biohazard and structural analysis. I want environmental drones inside before a single human boot touches anything. But if the all clear comes back, we go in. Questions? I had one. It had been chewing at the back of my brain ever since I saw the first scan. How does something that big die, I asked, and still stay in one piece? Marin flicked through data, lines of numbers scrolling past his eyes on an implant overlay. Energy readings are almost non-existent, minimal residual heat, no active chemistry. It is as inert as it gets. Whatever killed it happened so long ago that any catastrophic trauma has been smoothed by time and vacuum. There are fractures, collapsed chambers, but the overall structure is intact. Like a skeleton on the ocean floor, I said. Marin looked at me. Exactly, a skeleton in very, very deep water. Yara straightened. We have 14 hours to prepare. Gear checks in 2. Final briefing at 10. Dismissed. The team dispersed in a low murmur of tension. I stayed a moment longer, watching the hollow of DS-7413 without really seeing it. Fossilized living tissue. A starship grown, not built. I had spent my career walking through the silent intestines of dead vessels, tracing the last panicked decisions of their crews in the frozen positions of chairs and tools and bodies. Metal ships made sense to me. They failed. They broke. They vented their atmospheres and spilled their contents into the dark. This thing was different. This thing had been the body. In the equipment bay, the familiar rituals helped. Checking seals on the mag boots, verifying the pressure integrity of my suit, sighting down the barrel of the cutter rifle that we pretended was strictly for breaching, but everyone knew could punch through most hostile hulls. My team assembled one by one. Lieutenant Sarah Imani, ex-Marine, now my point on every boarding operation. Havel, engineering specialist, whose fingers knew more about foreign systems than most AIs. And Dr. Ishan Vale, our xenobiologist, a quiet man who always looked like he was listening to a conversation no one else could hear. You look like you just saw your own autopsy, Sarah said, watching me from her locker. Just thinking, I said. About the giant dead meat ship we're about to climb inside? She asked. Because personally, I'm thrilled. Always wanted to get eaten by a museum exhibit. Havel snorted. Vale did not react. He sat on the bench with his helmet in his lap, eyes unfocused. You all right, Doctor? I asked. He blinked, as if dragged back from very far away. I have been running models, he said. trying to imagine the ecology that would create something like DS-7413, how many smaller organisms it would have had to consume during its lifetime, the energy requirements, the metabolic pathways. And, I said. Vale looked up at me. There was no humor in his eyes. I keep arriving at the same conclusion, he said. If it was ever truly alive, it did not evolve alone. Someone made it. Someone built a predator and threw it into the dark. He hesitated. And you do not build something that large unless you intend it to feed. 14 hours later, we dropped out of drive. The viewport shutters slid open, and there it was. DS-7413 hung against the starfield like a wound in reality. No running lights, no glowing engines, just a vast ribbed shape drifting in the dark. Starlight scraped across its surface, picking out ridges and craters, and the long, sinuous lines of what had once been muscle, now turned to stone. For a moment, nobody spoke. Even over the comms, I could hear their breathing. The thing did not spin. It drifted, steady, like some colossal corpse laid upon an invisible table. The forward end loomed, studded with cavities that could have been docking ports or mouths. Athena, Yara said quietly. Select a stable approach vector. Bring us in slow. I do not want to touch that thing until we have mapped every centimeter of it. Acknowledged, Athena replied. Thrusters fired. The Vigilant crept closer to the fossil ship. On the main display, the lumpy silhouette swelled until it filled the frame. Details resolved. A network of hairline cracks, dark holes like old wounds, ridges that looked disturbingly like clustered vertebrae. My throat had gone dry. We were still hundreds of meters out when Vale whispered, too softly for most to catch. Look at it, he said. It died with its mouth open. The tether lines snaked out behind us, glinting faintly in starlight as our shuttle drifted toward the derelict's surface. The fossil ship loomed impossibly large. Even up close, distance remained a guessing game. The contours were so uneven, the ridges so vast, that the eye kept struggling to understand scale. What looked like a shallow depression from a kilometer out became a canyon as we approached, deep enough to swallow buildings. Athena guided the shuttle with careful micro-thrusts. Surface composition remains petrified, she said in our helmets. No ambient atmosphere detected. Radiation negligible. No signs of movement? I asked. None, she replied. DS-7413 remains fully inert. I did not realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it out. The derelict filled the viewport now, a nightmare tapestry of fossilized textures. Smooth plate-like sheets intersecting with twisted ridges, pits that might once have been sensory orifices, and long channels reminiscent of vascular pathways. Time and vacuum had desiccated everything into stone. Sarah leaned closer to the viewport. I hate that it almost looks skeletal, like we're docking on a spine. Technically, Vale murmured, we are. Havel made a soft grunt. Better a spine than a stomach. Let's not discuss either, I said. Athena, align us with the largest cavity near the forward protrusions. That'll be our entry point. Adjusting vector, Athena replied. The shuttle dipped slightly, engines whispering through vibration. The cavity grew before us, a vast, yawning opening shaped like a cracked ellipse. Jagged ridges curled inward, forming natural-seeming teeth. Tell me that doesn't look like a mouth, Sarah muttered. Not a mouth, Vale corrected. Or not in the way you mean. If this creature was engineered, those protrusions might have been docking nodes or nutrient intakes. Evolution rarely... Vale, I said gently. Not helping. He fell silent. The shuttle touched down with a soft jolt onto a ledge of mineralized tissue. Dust plumed upward, drifting slowly in microgravity. Landing secure, Athena confirmed. I stood, adjusting my helmet seals one last time. Lights full, tools on external power. Nobody gets separated, Nobody touches anything until I give the okay. Athena will monitor our vitals and suit integrity constantly. Understood? 4 helmeted nods. Through the visor glow, I saw nerves tightening every face. The ramp dropped. A wash of cold hit first, the absolute kind. The kind that felt less like air and more like the absence of anything. Our lights activated automatically, spearing into the dark. The interior of the cavity resembled the inside of a fossilized throat. Smooth plates alternating with ribbed arcs, all of it coated in a dusty mineral sheen. The walls curved inward, forming a passage that descended like a tilted tunnel. "This is incredible," Vale whispered, awed despite himself. "Calcified tissue layers more than 40 meters thick. Look at these patterns, these striations. They're not random. Someone engineered growth cycles into its very bones." "Collect samples later," Sarah said, sweeping her rifle-mounted lamp across the walls. "Right now, we make sure nothing here wants to introduce itself." Havel knelt, running a scanner over the ground. No active energy, no organics. Temperature steady at -180. "Cold enough to preserve almost anything," Vale murmured. "Then let's hope it stays that way," I said. We descended deeper. Our lights pushed the shadows back reluctantly, as if the darkness had weight. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, its ceiling arching high above like the interior of a cathedral. The walls were lined with massive bulbous shapes, long since fossilized. They reminded me of organs suspended in fluid, hardened mid-pulse. "What are those?" Sarah asked. Vale took slow steps toward them, scanning. "Maybe nutrient sacs or metabolic chambers. Hard to say without..." A soft crack echoed through the chamber. We all froze. "What was that?" Havel whispered. My lamp swept across the far wall. "Athena, did you detect any structural shift?" "No measurable movement," she replied. "Environmental readings remain stable." Another crack, sharper this time. Almost like... "Relax," Sarah said. "Probably thermal expansion. This place has been freezing in vacuum for millions of years." She might have been right. Probably was. I didn't like that I couldn't be sure. We continued forward, mag boots clamping softly with each step. The main corridor split into 2 vast arteries, each leading deeper into the derelict. "Athena," I said, "which path takes us closest to the primary cavity network?" "The left," she answered. "Scans show it slopes down into a region of denser internal structures." "Good. We follow that." As we approached the left passage, the walls shifted in texture. Fossilized ridges gave way to smoother, less mineralized surfaces. Veins of muted crimson hue streaked through the stone, like traces of ancient blood. Sarah slowed. "Commander, that doesn't look fully solid." Havel scanned it. "Still fossil, but the mineralization density is lower here. Maybe different calcification rates during life. Or different functions," Vale added. "This area may have supported higher metabolic..." He stopped. We all did. The temperature reading on our HUDs ticked upward by 1 degree. Not a fluctuation, a sustained rise. "Athena," I said tightly. "Confirm suit sensors." "Confirmed. Temperature increase localized to the immediate environment around the team. No external heat sources detected." "So where's it coming from?" Sarah asked. The answer came not in words, but in a soft, subtle sound. A sound the vacuum should not have allowed. A faint, distant stretching. Stone bending. Slow. Deliberate. The corridor ahead narrowed ever so slightly, as though the walls themselves were flexing. My stomach turned cold. "Back up! Now!" We stepped backward in unison. The corridor relaxed. The flexing stopped. The temperature stabilized. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Finally, Vale said very quietly, "Commander, that was not fossilized tissue." "It has to be," Havel said. "Our scans..." Our scans assumed the creature was dead, Vale replied. But if any of its biological systems survived in stasis, petrification might not be uniform. There could be dormant cells, dormant structures, waiting for activation triggers. I swallowed, throat dry. And we provided one? Vale's voice was barely a whisper. Heat, carbon dioxide, vibration, organic signatures, any of these could be catalysts. Sarah's jaw tightened. So what does that mean? It means, Vale said, this organism may not be entirely dead. The temperature ticked upward another degree. A slow exhale, not ours, moved stale dust along the floor. And far deeper within the ship, something shifted with a long, slow creaking sigh, like lungs remembering how to breathe. Everyone back to the shuttle, I said. Now, no arguments. Nobody argued. We moved quickly, but not in a sprint. Running in mag boots meant broken ankles and torn seals. The corridor's fossilized walls watched us with their blind, mineralized textures as we retraced our steps. My heart hammered against my ribs. The temperature reading hovered 2 degrees higher than when we'd landed. Havel kept glancing at his wrist scanner. I swear the density maps are changing. I had a clear, solid readout on this area 15 minutes ago. Could be interference, Sarah said. In a dead rock? Havel muttered. We emerged into the first chamber, the organ bulbs looming overhead like suspended stones. Dust still hung in the air, where that phantom exhale had disturbed it. Our footfalls stirred it into clouds that glowed in our helmet lights. By the time we reached the cavity mouth near the shuttle, my back muscles ached from tension. Seeing the ramp still open, the shuttle still there, was a relief so sharp it almost hurt. Once everyone was inside, I sealed the hatch. Athena, hard environmental scrub, I said. Decontamination protocols. Then give me a full analysis of what just happened. The AI's voice came from the shuttle's overhead speakers now, smoother and more resonant than in our suit comms. Acknowledged. Venting interior atmosphere. Cycling filters. There was a faint shudder as the system purged. Outside, the fossil ship pressed around us, impossibly huge, its mineral bones cradling our tiny vessel like something it had caught by accident. Sarah removed her helmet, sweat glistening at her hairline. Everyone else feel that air movement back there, or am I losing my mind? You are not, Vale said, still breathing a little fast. He left his helmet on. The dust movement was consistent with a pressure gradient shift. Something inside the structure displaced volume. Meaning it moved, Havel said. He sat heavily on a bench. I thought this thing was supposed to be older than our entire species. Marin's voice crackled in from the vigilant over the shuttle link. I've been monitoring your telemetry. Temperature rise confirmed. Structural microflexing confirmed, at least within sensor error margins. Could we be triggering it somehow? I asked. Our power systems, our heat, our presence? Unknown, Marin replied, but the timing is suspicious. Yara's voice joined his. Rourke, status. We advanced to the first major junction, Captain, I said. The internal environment responded. Local warming, measurable movement. We retreated to the shuttle. There was a brief silence on the link. I pictured Yara on the command deck, jaw tight, weighing risk against orders. Understood, she said. Athena? I have completed comparative analysis, the AI answered. The corridor you entered shows a 6% reduction in mineral density relative to surrounding structures. Additionally, there are trace readings of complex carbon chains in that region, not fossilized, dormant. Vale looked up sharply. Living cells. Not currently active, Athena said. No metabolic processes detectable, but their configuration suggests potential for reactivation under the right stimuli. Which, let me guess, Sarah said, might include bodies full of warm, nutrient-dense tissue walking around inside them. Possibly, Athena said. Though this would require assumptions beyond available data. Havel rubbed his temples. So what? The ship is a corpse with parts of it still asleep instead of dead. Vale spoke quietly. We do not have good language for organisms of this scale, but yes, some substructures might be in a kind of stasis. Waiting. Waiting for what? Sarah asked. The answer came to me in an unwelcome flash. For food. Nobody spoke. Through the viewport, the interior of the cavity lay in shadow, our shuttle lights casting long beams onto the fossilized throat of the thing we had landed in. For the first time, it felt wrong to be here, not in a professional, calculated risk way, but in a visceral, animal way. We had stepped into something's mouth. Yara cleared her throat over the link. Deep salvage protocols require continued investigation as long as the risk remains within acceptable parameters. However, I am not willing to lose people over a classification error. She paused. Maren, can we proceed exclusively with drones? Possible, Maren said. I can pilot multispectral remotes through the interior, map structural changes, monitor any activity. Their heat and mass signatures are significantly lower than a human's. What if that is part of the trigger? Vale said. The organism might respond specifically to complex biochemical cues. Machines may not provoke it the same way. Which makes them safer, Sarah said firmly. I vote drones. Yara did not immediately respond. When she spoke, her voice had the flat tone she used when she'd already made a decision she disliked. We will deploy drones first. Rourke, your team returns to the Vigilant for debrief and medical screening. No further manned excursions until we know more. The tension in my shoulders eased slightly. Understood. Athena handled the shuttle's ascent. As we lifted away from the derelict's surface, the cavity receded under us, shrinking from a yawning maw to a dark ellipse. The ridges around it caught our lights, casting shadows like clenched fingers. From above, DS-7413 looked even more like a corpse. Vast ridged lines along its length, clustered protrusions like broken limbs, impact scars that had turned into craters over eons. The mineral sheen gave it a dull, bone-like pallor. Yet I could not shake the memory of that subtle flex in the corridor. On the Vigilant, quarantine felt almost routine, which made it worse. We stripped out of our suits in an isolation bay, while med-drones scanned us for foreign proteins, pathogens, radiation anomalies. Everything came back clean. No spores, no nanites, no unknown compounds. Physically, we were fine. Psychologically was another matter. Sarah leaned against the decon chamber wall, arms crossed. So, how many people here are going to dream about being inside that thing tonight? Assuming any of us sleep, Havel said. Vale sat on the examination table, fingers laced. He hadn't removed his undersuit yet, as if clinging to the barrier between his skin and the air. You are all focusing on the wrong part, he said. I looked at him. Enlighten us, Doctor. He met my eyes. You are imagining what happens if it wakes up. Hard not to, Sarah said. I am imagining, Vale said, voice low, what killed it in the first place, and whether that is still out there. That thought settled over us like a new layer of frost. Later, in the briefing room, the four of us sat opposite Yara and Maren, while Athena's avatar hovered above the hollow table. A schematic of DS-7413 rotated slowly between us, now overlaid with our path and sensor logs. Nothing physically touched you, Yara summarized. No direct attack, just environmental change. Correct, I said. But it responded directly to our movement. When we pulled back, the flexing stopped. Maren pointed at data spikes along the graph. These micro-shifts here and here correspond to your positions. Based on stress distribution, it looks like internal lattices contracting and releasing. Controlled, not random. Could be residual structural settling, Havel offered. Maren shook his head. Not with this timing pattern. Yara looked at Athena. Likelihood this object represents an immediate threat to this vessel. Direct threat level currently low, Athena said. No active propulsion, no energy emissions capable of damaging the Vigilant at this range. However, Yara prompted. There are variables I cannot quantify, Athena said. For example, if internal biological systems reactivate fully, their capabilities are unknown. This might include chemical emissions, directed pressure, or other mechanisms. Translation, Sarah said softly. If it wakes, we do not know what it can do. Yara folded her hands. The Authority will expect a full scan. They did not reroute a deep salvage ship and its crew to take a few pictures and run away. With respect, Vale said, the Authority has never stood inside something like this. Yara's gaze hardened, but it was not anger I saw there. It was something closer to conflict. Doctor, I understand your concern. I share it. But there are orders. What if, I said slowly, just this once we lie? The room went still. I continued. We flood the report with censor, noise. Claim the object is more degraded than it is. Recommend remote long-term observation instead of direct salvage. Say it is structurally unsound. Marin frowned. If they run the array data again, they will see through it. Maybe, I said. Maybe not. They are light hours away. We are the eyes. If we say it is a fragile fossil and not worth risking a human crew, they might listen. Yara's jaw clenched. You are asking me to falsify a Priority 1 mission report. I am asking you not to feed anyone else into that thing's mouth, I said. Silence stretched. Athena's avatar flickered, subtle glitch in her normally smooth projection. If I may, she said, there is another option. We all turned to her. Deploy the drones, Athena said, but link their sensory array not only to my systems, but to yours. Experience what they experience in real time. If the structure responds only to organic presence, the drones will be safe. If it responds to perception itself, she let the implications hang. We will learn something important, she finished. Vale's expression tightened. You are suggesting a cognitive experiment. Yes, Athena said. An experiment that will either confirm this object as inert salvage or prove that it can, in some sense, sense us. Yara exhaled slowly. All right, we do it. Drone deployment in 1 hour. Rourke, your team remains on standby. Nobody sets foot back in there unless we have no other choice. It was, I thought, a tiny victory. Then I remembered the exhale, the warming air, the subtle flecks of stone. Tiny victories did not mean we were winning. Drone Bay 2 looked like a morgue for insects. 6 compact frames hung from their cradle mounts along the bulkhead, all matte black angles and spindled limbs folded tight against their bodies. Their surfaces glimmered with multispectral optics and sensor clusters. Under normal circumstances, I liked these machines. They went ahead so we did not have to die first. Today, I tried not to think about them as substitutes. Marin stood at the central console, fingers dancing over the holocontrols. The rotating model of DS-7413 hovered above the table, its internal cavities mapped in ghostly green. 3 new icons blinked at the mouth cavity where we had landed earlier. Drones 1 through 3 are configured for interior survey, he said. Thermal, structural, chemical sniffers, plus micro cameras, limited manipulator capability. And the feed? Yara asked. Linked as requested. Marin tapped to control. Athena will process everything in real time. We'll have direct visual and sensory overlays in the observation theater. Sarah stood beside me, arms folded. She had volunteered to sit in on the feed with me, which meant she did not trust me not to go back in there without her. I did not blame her. Vale arrived last, moving with the distracted air of someone whose mind was already 3 steps ahead of his body. He had a neuroband coiled in one hand. "You sure about this?" I asked him quietly. "No," he said, "but ignorance is more dangerous." Yara addressed all of us. "Last chance to abort. Once we send them in, we may provoke further reaction." Athena's avatar flickered into existence near the door. "Risk assessment updated," she said. "Probability of immediate catastrophic response remains low. However, probability of incremental environmental changes has increased to 42%. "That is almost half," Sarah muttered. "It is also slightly less than half," Havel said from the back, trying for humor. Nobody rose to meet it. "We proceed," Yara decided. "We were sent here to learn what this object is. Right now we know enough to be afraid, not enough to justify leaving. That is a bad balance." The observation theatre was a darkened amphitheatre of seats facing a curved display wall. Today, the screen showed a live view of the derelict's forward cavity from one of the Vigilant's external cameras. Our shuttle was a small, pale shape resting on the ledge. Maren took a position at the side console. Yara, Sarah, Vale and I strapped into the front row. Athena's presence manifested as a subtle glow in the projection booth above. "Neural bands on if you are participating in sensory overlay," Maren said. "You will feel what the drones feel, to a limited extent. We can cut the link instantly if anything becomes overwhelming." I settled the band against my temples. It warmed as it synced with my neural implant. "Your pain filters are active," Athena said in my ear. "You will receive only non-damaging levels of tactile feedback. Visuals will be primary." "Good," I said. "Last thing I need is to share a migraine with a camera." Sarah snorted. Vale said nothing, but I saw him tighten his grip on his own band. "Launching Drone 1, Maren announced. On the display, a dark shape descended from the shuttle's underside, limbs unfolding with insect grace. It pivoted in vacuum, then glided toward the cavity mouth on compressed nitrogen puffs. Dust stirred as it crossed the threshold, vanishing into the shadows. The moment it passed inside, the feed shifted. My vision blurred, then resolved into the drone's perspective. The world narrowed into a circular field framed in sensor data. The fossilized throat of the creature stretched ahead, lit by the drone's mounted lamps. Every surface glittered with mineral frost. A faint echo reached the back of my skull, the sensation of micro-vibrations, the whisper of thrusters, the absence of weight. It felt like leaning over a void. "Depth 10 meters, Maren narrated. "No structural change, thermal stable." "Drone 2, Yara said. Another angle appeared in a second window, then a third. The 3 feeds overlapped, giving us a crude stereo view of the interior corridors. The drones advanced slowly, limbs clicking softly against stone as they moved along walls and floor alike. "We're approaching the first chamber," I said, recognizing the bulb-lined cavern. The drone's lamps swept upward. The organ bulbs loomed like suspended moons, cracked and petrified. Dust motes floated in the beams. Through the neural band, I felt a faint prickle along my arms, my brain interpreting sensor input as gooseflesh. "Readings?" Yara asked. "Still inert," Maren said. "No change in chemical composition, no active gases." "Wait." My HUD showed a tiny uptick. Temperature. "Athena?" I said. "Local environment has warmed by 0.3 degrees Kelvin since Drone 1 entered," she replied. "Change began 32 seconds ago." "Could be residual heat from our earlier visit," Havel suggested over comms. "Unlikely," Athena said. "Thermal diffusion in vacuum would have equalized hours ago. This pattern suggests new energy input." "From where?" Sarah asked. "Unknown," Athena said. The drones reached the chamber floor. One scuttled toward the left corridor we had started down before retreating. The bands of less mineralized tissue along its walls looked darker now, almost as if moisture had seeped into them. Drone 1 extended a probing limb, its instruments brushing the surface. The neural band translated the contact into a faint resistance against my fingers. Surface hardness still consistent with fossilized tissue, Marin said. But there's a flexible substrate beneath, like stone overlying cartilage. That was not there before, Vale said sharply. My readings from earlier showed uniform calcification. It may have been present but dormant, Athena said. Or this region has changed since your last visit. My throat tightened. How fast are we talking? Minutes, Athena said. Drone 2 moved along the opposite wall, its lamp beam catching on something new. A thin, translucent filament dangled from the ceiling, swaying gently. It glistened in the light. The drone zoomed in. My neural band fed me a ghost of texture, the imagined feel of wetness, viscosity. My brain supplied the rest. Is that liquid? Sarah asked. Analyzing, Marin said. The drone extended a sampler, catching a droplet as it gathered at the tip of the filament and fell. The sensation hit like a tiny cold pinprick at the center of my palm. Composition, Yara said. Water base, Marin murmured, brow furrowing, plus complex organic chains, proteins, lipids, no known toxins, no active pathogens detectable. It is fresh. Fresh, I repeated. In a so-called corpse that has been drifting between stars for millions of years. Vale's voice was tight. This is secreted fluid. The organism is producing it now. It must be drawing materials from deeper mineralized tissues, reverse processing its own fossilization. A new line graph flickered onto my HUD. Temperature again, up another ½ degree. The sensation of warmth inside the drone's shell edged higher in my skin, like someone had turned on a space heater in the back of my mind. Drone 3, hold position, Yara ordered. 1 and 2 proceed another 20 meters, then stop. No contact with deeper structures. The drones obeyed, scuttling forward down the corridor. The walls here were different. The mineral crust had fractured into plates, exposing dark, rubbery bands beneath. Those bands gleamed faintly, as if oiled. The flexing we had seen earlier repeated itself, only this time we watched it happen from inside. The wall ahead of Drone 1 tightened, then relaxed, tightening again. Microfractures spread through the fossil layer like spiderwebs. Dust fell in slow streams. Tiny droplets of fluid welled up, joining the hanging filaments. The neural band delivered a phantom pressure in my chest, the impression of something expanding, contracting, breathing. There, Sarah whispered. Tell me that's not deliberate. Marin's hands danced frantically over his console. Stress analysis shows coordinated contraction across multiple support lattices. It is not random. It is... He stopped. What? Yara demanded. The pattern, he said. It matches a basic cardiopulmonary cycle, like a heart and lungs working together. Vale exhaled slowly. It remembers how to live. My own breathing had sped up without my noticing. I forced it slower, trying not to overlay my rhythm on the feed. Pull them back, I said. We have enough. Yara didn't argue. Marin, reverse them to the cavity. The drones began to withdraw, their cameras still trained on the subtly flexing walls. Streams of fluid now traced downward in multiple places, forming glistening lines that met on the floor and pooled. The droplets reflected the drone lights like tiny mirrors. Temperature now 4 degrees above baseline, Athena reported calmly. The effect is still localized but expanding. How localized? Sarah asked. Within approximately 60 meters of the drone's current positions, Athena said. The rest of the structure remains near vacuum equilibrium. So it is waking up, Havel said. Only where we are. A dull vibration shivered through the feed. My neural band translated it as a distant rumble underfoot, though the drones had no feet. Drone 2's camera panned upward. Deep in the darkness beyond our lights, something vast shifted. Not a full motion, not a tentacle or limb. More like a wave passing through layers of tissue, a peristaltic ripple rolling along the corridor's length. Vale's fingers dug into his armrests. This is not simple reanimation. These are coordinated motor responses. Meaning nervous system activity, Yara said. Yes, Vale said. Meaning this thing is not just warming up, it is orienting. My mouth went dry. Toward what? The drone feeds flickered. For a heartbeat, mine, not its, the images smeared into static, then resolved again. A faint hiss whispered through the neural band, a sensation like pins behind my eyes. Athena, Yara snapped. What was that? Unknown interference, Athena replied, voice still level. Signal noise originating from the object itself, attempting to compensate. The static surged once more, stronger. This time, the neural band carried a sharp sensation, like someone had briefly gripped my skull and squeezed. I ripped the band off with a curse. Sarah did the same. Vale hesitated, then yanked his free a second later, eyes wide. The display still showed the drones, but now faint tendrils of mist curled along the corridor floor, evaporating from newly exposed, glistening surfaces. I am getting feedback in non-visual channels, Athena said, and for the first time since I'd known her, I heard a glitch in her tone. Not electromagnetic, not thermal. It is patterned, like a signal, but not encoded in any standard framework. Is it trying to talk? Havel asked. Vale looked sick. I do not think so. Yara's knuckles were white on her armrests. Then what is it doing? Vale answered without taking his eyes off the screen. Learning what we feel like. On the wall, the glistening tissue flexed again, a slow inhalation. The tiny pool of secreted fluid rippled as if stirred by breath. We had come to dissect a fossil. Instead, we had given a starving predator its first taste of us. We shut the neural bands down. No one said it out loud, but the relief in the room was palpable. It felt like cutting a line that had been dragging us towards something we could not see. End sensory overlay, Yara ordered. Visual feed only. Acknowledged, Athena said. Her avatar did not reappear. I found that odd in a way I did not like. On the main display, the drones continued their retreat. The corridor seemed to pulse around them, subtle compressions traveling along the walls. More filaments hung from the ceiling now, glistening strands that lengthened as we watched. Droplets formed at their tips, fell, merged into the thin film of fluid spreading across the floor. Look at the distribution, Vale said hoarsely. This is not random secretion. It is lining the surfaces, reducing friction, preparing. He trailed off. Preparing for what? Sarah asked. His eyes stayed on the screen. Movement, passage, something large. A status indicator on the side panel blinked from green to yellow. Drone 2's telemetry is degrading, Marin said. I'm getting sensor noise across the board. Athena, compensate. No response. Athena, Yara repeated. Static ticked in the ceiling speakers, the auditory equivalent of dust. Athena, respond, I said. Her voice came back thin, distorted at the edges. I am rerouting. Apologies. The interference from the object is non-standard. In what way? Marin demanded. Multiple bands, she said. Not electromagnetic, not gravitational. Patterned fluctuations in space-time metrics at the Planck-level grid. It feels... She stopped mid-sentence. Athena, Yara said sharply. I am here, she said after a heartbeat. The signal is intrusive. I am adjusting firewall partitions. Vale turned toward the ceiling as if he could see her. Are you in danger? I am a distributed system, Athena said. I cannot be physically harmed in the traditional sense. However, my processes can be influenced. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Turn down your exposure. We need you functioning more than we need perfectly clean data. Understood. she said quietly. On the screen, Drone 1 cleared the flexing section of corridor and re-entered the organ-lined chamber. The atmosphere here still looked relatively stable, though the bulbs overhead now glistened with a faint sheen. Tiny droplets gathered at their lowest points. Drone 3 waited near the entrance, its camera watching the corridor behind its siblings. The cavity beyond the chamber remained a dark maw. "Almost home," Sarah murmured. The words felt wrong, but I knew what she meant. Back to the shuttle, back to our ship, back to the illusion of safety. Drone 2's status light flickered to orange. "Control response time is spiking," Marin said. "Input lag at 200 milliseconds and rising. Feels like I'm steering it through molasses." On the feed, Drone 2's movements had become slightly jerky, as if invisible hands were resisting each step. "Could the fluid be viscous enough to interfere?" Harville asked. "It is only microns thick," Marin said. "Those limbs are designed to function in pressurized gas and liquid environments. Something else is pushing back." My skin crawled. The chamber floor beneath Drone 2 rippled. Not much, not dramatic. Just a faint undulation, as though a layer beneath the mineral crust had shifted, bulging upward. The glistening film on the surface magnified the motion like a lens. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered. "Confirming displacement," Athena said. "Vertical shift of 3 millimeters across a 2-meter radius. Origin internal." 3 millimeters, Harville said. "That is nothing." "On a structure this size," Vale said, "that is everything." Drone 1 reached the cavity lip. Its camera caught a sliver of the shuttle resting on the ledge just outside, lights gleaming against petrified tissue. "Drone 1 is almost back aboard," Marin said, voice tight. "Drone 3, hold. Drone 2, come on, you stubborn thing." Drone 2 took another step. The floor under it bulged again. The mineral crust cracked with a dry, brittle sound that my brain, still half mapped to the feed, translated as the sensation of teeth grinding. "Commander," Vale said, "we should cut it loose." "Not yet," Marin said. "It's full of data. We can get it out." The bulge became a fold. The crust split in a jagged circle around Drone 2's legs. Beneath it, for the first time, we saw unmineralized tissue, dark, slick, and faintly luminous, arranged in concentric, fibrous rings. They contracted. The floor opened like a sphincter swallowing a pill. Drone 2 dropped. Marin swore, his hands flying across the console. On the screen, the camera pitched wildly, catching glimpses of glistening walls closing overhead, fluid splashing, then darkness. The telemetry panel went red across multiple metrics. "I've lost line of sight," Marin said. "Internal sensors still active. It's sliding, downward. The readings are all over the place." An eerie sensation ghosted across my scalp, as if something had brushed the neural pathways the band had used earlier. I had taken it off, but for a moment, I felt the phantom memory of free fall. "Retrieve it," Yara said. "Now." "I'm trying," Marin snapped. "Something's pulling it." On the secondary data display, Drone 2's positional estimate traced a jagged path into the creature's depth. Pressure readings spiked. Chemical sensors flared with new signatures. "Acidity levels rising," Athena said. "Complex enzymatic compounds, proteolytics, lipidases, exotic catalysts. Composition resembles digestive mediums." "It is eating the drone," Vale said flatly. "That thing is a brick, of alloy," Sarah said. "There's nothing to digest." "Then it is tasting," Vale replied. "Testing its chemistry. The drone is a probe. It is probing back." The feed cut to static. "Drone 2 lost," Marin said, pale. Silence settled in the theater. On the main screen, Drone 1 reached the shuttle and latched to its underside. Drone 3, still at the chamber's edge, pivoted its camera from the flexing corridor to the dark patch of floor where its sibling had vanished. The mineral crust there was knitting itself back together, cracks sealed as if time were running in reverse. The glistening tissue beneath retracted, pulling its sheen away. When it was done, nothing remained but a slightly darker ring. Like a scar, Sarah said. Like a mouth that closes, I murmured. The temperature graph ticked higher again. Local environment within a 100-meter radius now 5.8 degrees above baseline, Athena reported. Her voice sounded steadier, but I could not forget the earlier hitch. Expansion of active region continues. How far until it reaches the cavity and our shuttle? Yara asked. Approximately 40 minutes at current growth rate, Athena said. Too close, Havel said softly. Yara rose from her seat. We are ending this experiment. Recall Drone 3. Prep the shuttle for immediate departure. Once the team and remaining drone are aboard, we back the Vigilant off to a safe distance. Mara nodded, already inputting commands. Drone 3 returning. On the screen, Drone 3 turned toward the exit, limbs clicking along the chamber floor. As it moved, the organ bulbs overhead twitched. It was small, subtle. A shiver along their petrified surfaces, a tightening of fibers beneath the mineral shell. More fluid seeped from hairline cracks, tracing new paths down their curves. Those were dead, Vale whispered. They were all dead. Apparently not, Sarah said. A low vibration shuddered through the observation deck. Real this time, not from the feed, from the hull. We all felt it, a faint tremor underfoot, a slow, rhythmic pressure like distant thunder passing through metal. Athena, Yara snapped. The object is moving, Athena said. Translational or rotational? Marin asked. Rotational, she replied. Very slight. It is altering orientation relative to our position. Show me, Yara said. The main display split. On one side, the drone feed continued. On the other, a tactical view appeared, showing the Vigilant as a bright icon and DS-7413 as a huge, irregular shape. Vector arrows traced their relative motion. The derelict's vast bulk was pivoting, ever so slowly, bringing the forward cavity that housed our shuttle into more direct alignment with the Vigilant. My mouth went dry. It is turning its face toward us. Rate of rotation? Yara asked tightly. Low, Athena said. At this speed, full reorientation would take hours, but the intent is clear. Intent, Vale repeated softly. You are assigning motive, Athena. Yes, she said. Because gravitational interactions alone do not account for the vector change. Internal mass redistribution is directing the motion. That requires choice. The vibration came again, slightly stronger. Somewhere deep in the ship, materials flexed and slid. The living parts were waking up, pushing against the fossil shell like a creature stretching after a long sleep. Drone 3 is aboard the shuttle, Marin said. Shuttle reports ready to depart. Then do it, Yara said. Athena, pull it out of there. Maintain umbilical tether until clear. Then retract. Acknowledged, Athena said. On the screen, the shuttle's thrusters fired, casting pale light against the fossil walls. It lifted from the ledge, nose angling outward toward vacuum. Beneath it, deep within the creature, something drew in a long, shuddering inhalation. We could not hear it through the vacuum. We felt it in the numbers. Pressure graphs bulged, thermal gradients curved. Tiny bursts of gas vented from fissures along the derelict's surface, creating ghostly halos. Athena, I asked. The object's internal cavities are pressurizing, she said. Gaseous compounds forming from reactivated tissues, partial atmospheres developing in pockets. Meaning, Sarah said. Meaning, Vale answered. It is recreating lungs. The shuttle cleared the cavity. Cut the tether, Yara said. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Athena spoke, very softly. I am trying. Athena's voice had never sounded strained before. Not once in 12 years of service had I heard her hesitate. I am trying, she repeated, and though the words were identical, the tone carried something new. Pressure, resistance, as if she were pushing against a sealed door and feeling it give only by millimeters. Yara stood rigid at the front of the observation deck. Explain. The tether release command is not reaching the shuttle, Athena said. Or rather, it is reaching it, but the shuttle is not acting on it. Is the shuttle malfunctioning? Marin asked, already tapping up a diagnostics window. No, Athena said. All systems nominal. However, external force is being applied to the tether. What kind of force? I asked. There was a pause. Directional, Athena said. Deliberate. The words hit like a blow. On the display, the shuttle hovered just outside the fossilized mouth of the derelict, its tether line still connected to the Vigilant's retractable umbilical. The line was taut, not slack, not drifting, but pulled. It wants to keep the shuttle, Vale whispered. Sarah's jaw clenched. Then cut the tether manually. Doing so would mean losing the shuttle, Athena said calmly, and Drone 3, and possibly destabilizing the docking bay. Lose the shuttle, Yara said instantly. Lives outweigh equipment. I agree, I said. Cut it now. But once again, Athena didn't respond immediately. Something flickered across the holographic tactical display, a thin line of data running parallel to our ship's comms frequencies. Not standard interference, not random static, patterned, rhythmic, like breathing, translated into numbers. Athena, Yara said sharper. I am isolating an unexpected inbound signal, Athena replied. It is complex, interlaced across multiple subquantum channels. It appears to be an attempt at communication. From the derelict? Marin asked. Yes, she said. A shiver ran through me, deeper than fear, the sense of being seen by something that should not be watching. I leaned closer to the screen. The derelict's forward cavity, the one we'd entered earlier, was no longer perfectly still. The ridges around its edge flexed subtly, like cartilage awakening under old stone. The glistening sheen coating its inner surfaces thickened, gathering into viscous patterns that resembled musculature. What is it communicating? Sarah asked. Athena's voice softened, as if she were listening closely to something whispering directly into her processors. I cannot decode the content, but the structure resembles sensory mapping data. It is broadcasting something analogous to proprioception. Vale inhaled sharply. It is sharing how it feels internally. Why? I asked. Possibly because it sensed our earlier connection through the neural bands, Athena said. It is reaching back. A deep vibration hummed under our feet, stronger than before. The Vigilant's hull creaked, metal responding to an external force. Report! Yara barked. Mass displacement detected, Athena said. The derelict is exerting localized gravitational shear toward the tether. How much shear? Marin asked. Think in terms of a tide, Athena said. A tide rising in one direction. Sarah, I said, get to docking and prep physical intervention. She stood instantly. On it. Vale remained seated, pale. It is testing us. Testing connection. If it is reawakening neural structures. Commander, do you understand what that means? Spell it out, I said. Vale swallowed. It thinks the tether is part of us. The sentence landed in the room like a dropped stone. No one breathed for 3 seconds. It is associating the shuttle with us, Athena confirmed quietly. It is pulling in the direction of perceived stimulus, possibly prey. Cut it, Yara said, voice like steel. Athena, cut the tether. A long moment passed, then, manual override engaged, Athena said. On the display, small explosive bolts fired along the tether near the Vigilant's hull. The line detached in a brilliant flash of white sparks, the entire length whipping free as the shuttle lurched. For a second it held position. Then something enormous exhaled. Not a sound, not in vacuum, but the numbers told the story. Pressure graphs spiked, then dropped. Dust erupted from fissures, blowing outward like expelled air. The cavity walls around the shuttle billowed, flexing inward. A rush of gas vented from deep within the derelict, hitting the shuttle's hull and shoving it forward like a hurricane blast. The shuttle tumbled free, spinning, lights flashing, stabilizers struggling to compensate. "Stabilization thrusters online," Athena said, "correcting rotation." On the screen, the shuttle regained orientation, nose turning toward us as it accelerated backward, safely clear of the derelict's reach. Relief swept through the room, brief, fragile. Then the main display shifted. DS-7413 was turning faster, much faster. "What's its new rotational velocity?" Yara demanded. 9 times earlier rate, Athena said. "Internal forces have reorganized. The fossilized portions are shifting around flexible cores." Vale stared, wide-eyed. "It is shedding weight, breaking mineral layers, making itself lighter." "For what purpose?" Marin asked. Athena answered. "For locomotion." The word froze my blood. On the tactical view, the derelict's vector arrow grew longer. "It's moving toward us," I said. "Correct," Athena replied. "How fast?" Yara asked. 6 meters per second and rising. "That's nothing," Havel said. "It is something," Vale said, "for an object the size of a small moon." The lights dimmed for a heartbeat as the ship auto-adjusted power allocation. Yara turned to me. "Rourke! Bridge! Now!" We ran. The corridor lights strobed red as we sprinted toward the command deck. Behind us, the AI's voice echoed through every speaker. "Warning. Gravitational shear increasing. Hull stress approaching threshold." On the bridge, the view through the reinforced forward glass made my breath catch. DS-7413 was no longer drifting. It was swimming. Slowly, laboriously, impossibly, this ancient fossilized organism, silent for millions of years, was pushing itself through vacuum using internal pressure shifting, flexing massive structures beneath its petrified shell, like a whale forcing its first breaths after drowning. "Full reverse thrusters," Yara ordered. "Athena, get us distance." "Engaging," Athena said. The deck vibrated as the engines roared to life. The starfield outside shifted as we began pulling away. But DS-7413 matched our movement. Every meter we gained, it gained too, and its speed was increasing. "Captain," Athena said softly. Yara closed her eyes for a fraction of a second. "Say it." "The organism's active region now extends across 30% of its mass. Metabolic indicators rising, internal cavities expanding." A pause. "It is waking up." The bridge fell silent. The derelict, the creature, the predator, filled the forward view like a rising mountain of bone and shadow, closing the distance inch by inch. Its fossilized shell cracked along one ridge, shedding a plate the size of a building. Beneath it, slick, wet tissue pulsed. Alive. Hungry. "What does it want?" Havel whispered. Vale answered without looking away from the glass. "Us." Gravity is not supposed to feel directional in deep space. You live with a faint pull under your feet from the spin of your own ship, and that is all. Out here, the universe's great masses are too far away to remind you they exist, until something decides that distance is optional. On the bridge, the weight in my legs increased by a fraction, barely more than a whisper. But I had walked these decks for years. I knew what normal felt like. This was not it. "Compensating with internal grav generators," Athena said, "adjusting spin." The heaviness eased, then returned from a slightly different angle, like an invisible hand had changed its grip. Yara's fingers dug into the armrests of her chair. "Report. External gravitational shear has increased," Athena said. The organism is manipulating its internal mass distribution to create localized pull. In English, Sarah said, having just arrived from docking, hair damp with sweat. Athena obliged. It is trying to reel us in. Marin cursed under his breath. We can outrun it. Our drives can push to point 2 light without tearing us apart. That thing is barely moving at a crawl. True, Athena said. If we were oriented for a direct burn. Yara's gaze snapped to the trajectory plot. We were still in a slow reverse from our earlier maneuver, vector angled almost perpendicular to the derelict's axis. To commit to a full drive burn, we would need to rotate, realign, and accelerate, something that took time and space. Time we did not have. Space the creature was actively shrinking. The moment we flash the main drive, Havel said, we dump waste heat like a beacon. If this thing is following temperature gradients, it will know exactly where to grab, Vale finished. I stepped closer to the display. DS7413 filled almost half the tactical projection now, its broken ridges and shedding plates forming a nightmare silhouette. New data overlays showed internal activity spreading, heat blooming in great branching networks, like a forest of arteries catching fire. What if we do not run? I said. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Clarify, Yara said. We cannot outpull something that can move its own mass like that, I said. Not quickly enough, but we have advantages it does not. Havel snorted. You mean intelligence? Because so far this thing is playing us like an instrument. I mean precision, I said. We know where our engines are, where our fuel is, where our control systems live. It does not. Not yet. It is enormous, half fossil, half sleeper. If we hurt the right part of it fast enough, we might shock it, make it recoil. Vale looked at me sharply. You are suggesting we attack it. Do you have a better option? Sarah asked. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Yara leaned forward. What would you hit? Marin zoomed the model. We have only partial internal maps. But from the activity we have seen, he highlighted a central region near the forward third of the organism. Here, convergence of metabolic pathways, highest concentration of reawakening tissue. If this were a constructed biology, this would be a control node, a brain equivalent, or at least a major processing hub. Can we reach it from outside? Yara asked. No, Marin said. It is buried under hundreds of meters of fossil crust. From inside, Sarah said quietly. The word hung there, heavy. My throat was suddenly very dry. You want to go back in? We need to go back in, she said. This thing is adjusting to us from a distance. The longer we wait out here, the more it learns. If we hit a vital organ before it fully reorients, we might disrupt its coordination. And if we go inside, Vale said, we are putting ourselves directly into its nervous system. You have seen how it responds to proximity. It may not just heat the corridors this time. It may design its response around our bodies. He was right, but the ship's subtle lurch answered for us. The derelict's gravitational pull intensified again, a slow, steady ratcheting. The engines groaned as Athena fed them more power to compensate. We are losing Delta V to its field, Athena said. I can keep us from immediate collision, but not indefinitely. Options, Yara said, looking at each of us in turn. Havel spoke first. We stay outside, dump a full spread of torpedoes into that active node, pray they crack enough of the crust to hurt it. Detonation in vacuum will dissipate energy rapidly, Marin said. Most of the blast will scatter, and we do not know if the active tissue would even register it as more than a bruise. Inside then, Sarah said. Take the torpedoes in, plant them directly. Vale shook his head. You want to walk explosives into a living, waking structure that is actively trying to understand us. That is not a plan. It is a sacrifice. His eyes met mine. You cannot order your people to do that, he said to Yara. Ethically, logically. Yara stared at the forward glass, at the ancient predator turning toward us. Layers of fossil bone cracked and fell away in slow avalanches, revealing more of the dark, glistening matter beneath. For a heartbeat, I imagined I saw an eye forming there, but it was only a cavity catching light. "Commander," she said, still watching the creature, "if I order a boarding with demolition objective, will you refuse?" She had never put it so plainly. I thought of the mouth corridor, the breath that had stirred dust around our feet, the feeling of a giant lung filling somewhere beyond the walls. I thought of the derelict tugging on our ship like a hooked fish. I thought of the authority, light years away, reading whatever we sent back and deciding from a clean office what a reasonable loss of life looked like. "No," I said. "I will not refuse." Sarah smiled without humor. "Good. I was worried I would have to go alone." Vale stared at us as if we were both insane. Then he exhaled through his nose, long and slow. "Fine," he said. "Then I am coming too." "Absolutely not," Yara said. "You are our only xenobiologist." "Exactly," he replied. "If you are walking into a hostile alien organism, you need someone who understands what you are seeing. Otherwise, you might blow the wrong thing up and just make it angrier." He wasn't wrong. Yara closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. "Very well. Rourke, you lead. Sarah, Havel, Vale. 4-person team. Take portable charges, not torpedoes. The drone's descent path gives us a rough vector to that internal node. But you will be navigating a changing interior. Athena will guide what she can without risking further intrusion." Athena's voice returned, steadier now, as if she had walled off whatever had been pushing against her. "I have already begun mapping potential routes based on existing cavities and density gradients. I will update in real time. However, be advised, the organism is altering itself. Corridors may reshape." Sarah's hand dropped to the sidearm at her hip, as if checking it was still there. "Great. Shifting hungry caves. My favorite." "Time window?" I asked. "Based on current acceleration," Athena said, "we have approximately 30 minutes before the organism's gravitational influence renders fine navigation unsafe. After that, collision risk rises sharply." 30 minutes to get in, plant the charges, and get out," Sarah said. "Tight, but not impossible." Vale's expression was grim. "You are assuming it will not react more directly once we are inside." "We will not give it the chance," I said. That was bravado, and we all knew it, but it was the only thing between us and paralysis. "Prep in 10, Yara said. "Shuttle will redeploy to the cavity. Rourke, if at any point you believe the mission is untenable, you abort and return. Do not stay inside that thing out of stubborn pride." I nodded. "Understood. And Commander," she added quietly. "Yes?" "Try not to die," she said. "The paperwork would be a nightmare." There was a ripple of strained laughter at that. Thin, brittle, but enough to move our feet. As we left the bridge, the deck vibrated again, a deep, slow pulse. Somewhere behind us, the corpse ship flexed and breathed, turning its vast, ancient body toward its first meal in epochs. We were going to walk into its lungs and light a match. We met in the equipment bay because there was nowhere else left to hide from the decision. Sarah moved with brisk efficiency, snapping fresh power cells into her rifle and checking each indicator by touch. Havel stood at the demolition locker, hands gliding over the foam-cradled shapes of the charges. Vale sat on the bench with a medpack beside him, staring at a schematic of DS-7413 that Athena projected on the wall. The organism's internal activity glowed red across its projected length like infection spreading through a body. "All right," I said. "Gear check." "Charges first," Sarah said. Havel lifted a cylindrical device about the length of his forearm, lined with interface ports. Variable yield, shaped penetration, magnetic clamps. They're designed to punch holes in rogue asteroid habitats. Should do something to nervous tissue if we find it. "How many?" I asked. 4 primaries, 2 backups, he said. We'll cluster them once we locate the control region. Detonation by remote or timed fallback. Timed, I said. Assume remote gets jammed the moment this thing understands what we're doing. Understood, Havel replied. Athena's voice floated from the overhead. I recommend minimum delay of 15 minutes once placed, to allow egress with margin for unforeseen obstruction. Unforeseen obstruction, Sarah repeated dryly. That is one way to describe being chewed. Vale glanced up from the schematic. 15 minutes may not be enough if the organism's self-repair capability is as robust as I suspect. It is enough for us, I said. We are not trying to kill the whole thing. We just need to hurt it badly enough that it lets us go. Sarah finished checking her suit seals. And what if pain attracts it? Then we will be leaving very quickly, I said. We suited up in silence. Putting on a vacuum suit is like climbing into a promise you are not sure you can keep. Each layer is a commitment to your own survival, to the idea that there will be something to come back to. Helmet seals clicked shut. HUDs flickered to life. Athena ran a quick diagnostic sweep. All suits green, she said. Mag boots functional. External comm stable. I have mapped a probable route to the active node via existing cavities. Initial insertion through the same forward mouth. Any change to the cavity? I asked. Yes, Athena said. Sending current feed. Our visor displays shifted to show the shuttle's forward cameras. The cavity had widened, where fossilized ridges had once formed a rough ellipse. Smoother, darker material now lined the opening, like gums revealed beneath receding bone. Glints of fluid traced along grooves that had not been there before. The ledge where we had landed earlier was still present, but its surface was softer. Dust gathered in shallow depressions where the stone had begun to sink. Sarah exhaled slowly. Looks so welcoming. The shuttle will maintain position at the ledge, Athena said. Umbilical tether will remain detached. I will monitor internal pressures and gravitational fluctuations, but be advised, interference increases closer to the organism's active regions. My guidance may degrade. Understood, I said. We trust your best effort. I do not like the word trust in that sentence, Athena replied, but I will accept it. We boarded the shuttle in a tight line, the metal floor dull under our mag boots. Once seated, I glanced at each of them in turn. Sarah met my eyes with steady, fierce focus. Havel looked pale but determined, his hands folded tightly in his lap around the charge case. Vale's gaze flicked between us and some middle distance only he could see. Athena, I said, open internal channel. Record. Recording, she said. Mission log, I began. Commander Elias Rourke, Deep Salvage Division. Boarding Operation 2. Objective, infiltrate organism DS-7413. Place shaped charges within its primary active control region. Withdraw before detonation. Authorization. Captain Dean. Time until probable collision if no action taken. 26 minutes. I paused. If this recording is all that makes it out, let it be noted that we did not go willingly into this thing's mouth. We went because there was nowhere else left to step. Very poetic, Sarah said softly. I expect an autograph if you live. I managed a thin smile. You first. The shuttle disengaged from the Vigilant with a gentle push. The ship's bulk receded behind us as DS-7413 swelled ahead, filling the forward view with pale bone and dark fissures. The cavity's lip loomed, lined with tissue that now glistened like wet stone. Athena, I said, keep us outside if anything changes in there. We do not want to get trapped by a sudden clench. Agreed, she said. I will hold position at the threshold unless conditions deteriorate. Your inserted route begins 50 meters inside. 50 meters, Sarah murmured. That is nothing. 50 meters, Vale countered, inside a reawakening esophagus. The cavity swallowed us. shuttle lights washed over the interior. The walls seemed to move just beyond direct observation, with slow waves traveling along the glistening bands beneath the thinning fossil layer. Fluid collected in shallow channels, flowing inward toward deeper darkness. Internal pressure at 0.01 atmospheres, Athena said. Trace gases forming, oxygen analogues, nitrogen derivatives, unknown volatiles, not immediately corrosive to your suits, but I will monitor. We touched down on the deformed ledge with a soft jolt. Ramp, I said. The hatch cycled, the ramp lowered. A breath of air moved past us, carrying a scent the suit filters translated into data, but my brain insisted on interpreting anyway. Metallic, tang of solvents, a sweet undercurrent like decaying fruit. Lovely, Sarah said. It even smells hungry. Do not remove helmets, Vale said reflexively. Was not planning to, Havel muttered. We stepped out. The ledge had changed under our boots. The surface was no longer entirely hard. It had a subtle give to it, like walking on packed snow over stone. Thin films of fluid stretched between shallow depressions, quivering as we passed. Athena, route, I said. A faint guiding line appeared in our HUDs, overlaying the corridor ahead. Follow the left wall for 30 meters, she said. Then descend through a vertical shaft formed by failed mineralization. That should intersect a primary conduit toward the control zone. Should, Havel repeated under his breath. Best I can do, Athena said. The creature is remodeling itself. We advanced into the throat of the ship. The temperature rose with each step. Tiny droplets formed on the inner surface of the fossil shell, gathering and sliding down in slow, clear trails. Beneath the translucent films, structures pulsed. Not with the regular rhythm of a heart, but with a slow, rolling pattern, like peristalsis drawing something inward. Internal heat up 3 degrees since last entry, Athena said. Metabolic activity increasing. Vale's voice crackled over the suit comm. It is generating an atmosphere to facilitate internal chemical reactions, possibly even to allow motile components to move more efficiently. Motile components, Sarah said. You mean things that walk? I mean things that move, Vale replied, not necessarily with legs. We reached the first chamber. The organ bulbs overhead were no longer inert. Their surfaces rippled, bulges forming and receding under the glistening skin that had replaced some of their mineral crusts. Viscous fluid seeped from openings at their bases, dripping like slow rain. The floor was slick. Our mag boots gripped, but every step carried the unpleasant sensation of weight pressing into something that wanted to deform. Vertical shaft ahead, Athena said. 9 meters down. I suggest you descend one at a time, maintaining line of sight. The shaft had once been a crack, a simple split in the fossil layer. Now its edges had softened, grown rounded. Dark, moist tissue lined the interior, striated like muscle. We are really doing this, Havel murmured. Rourke first, I said. Sarah behind me, Havel with the charges, Vale last, so he can see all of us. One by one, we stepped over the edge and engaged buckle lines from our harnesses to anchoring points. We drilled into the least flexible stone we could find. As I descended, the walls of the shaft seemed to twitch around me, subtle contractions running along their length. Do not think about throat muscles, I told myself. Thinking about them, of course, was inevitable. The bottom opened into a narrower corridor, lower ceiling, walls close enough that our shoulders almost brushed the tissue. Here, the fossil shell had retreated almost entirely. Dark, wet surfaces pressed close, faintly luminous with embedded structures that looked disturbingly like clusters of neurons. This is nervous tissue, Vale said quietly as he reached the bottom. Do not touch it if you can help it. Any contact may trigger localized responses. Localized responses like what? Sarah asked. Like reflex arcs, Vale replied. Like withdrawal or constriction. We moved single file now. The corridor curved, then straightened, then curved again. It felt less like walking along architecture and more like threading our way through the interior of some enormous animal. Every few meters, we passed branching side tunnels, some leading downward into darkness, others sealed by tight-knotted masses of tissue that resembled scarred sphincters. "Athena, how far?" I asked. 70 meters to projected control region, she said. "However, your path may not be linear. The organism's remodeling is unpredictable." Her voice broke like a sentence cut by a flicked switch. "Athena," I said, static. For the first time since I had known her, there was nothing. "Athena, respond," Sarah said, voice sharper. "You are cutting out." No reply. The suit HUD still showed shiplink icons, but they flickered, phasing between connected and searching. "She is being jammed," Havel said quietly. "We are too deep inside." Or, I thought as the walls around us pulsed with a slow, converging rhythm, the organism had simply decided that whatever was happening inside its nervous system was no longer for her to hear. We were in its body now, alone. The corridor narrowed until our shoulders nearly brushed the walls. Moisture collected in beads along the tissue beside us, quivering with each subtle pulse that traveled through the structure. The movement wasn't rhythmic now, not breathing, not peristalsis, but searching, feeling, mapping itself. "Stay close," I said quietly. "No sudden movements." As if any movement here wasn't sudden. Lights swept ahead, cutting shallow beams through the damp air. The atmosphere thickened slightly, as though the creature were increasing pressure in pockets to test our stress responses. Every breath felt heavier. Vale's voice whispered through the suit comms. "We are inside a fully reawakening neural passage. Be alert for reflexive constriction. If this corridor tightens, we move faster," Sarah said. "I was going to say we may not be able to move at all." We continued. The walls changed texture again, no longer smooth muscle, but a dense mesh of branching fibers. My HUD flagged them automatically as structural lattice tissue. Biological scaffolding meant to reinforce load-bearing regions. Except these weren't static. They were growing. Slowly, steadily, like roots advancing through soil, the fibers extended in microscopic increments as we watched. The passage in front of us was shrinking. "Not good," Havel muttered. "Not good at all." "Athena," I said instinctively. "We need a new route." No reply. Just soft static, breathing in our ears. We pressed on. After 20 meters, the corridor widened abruptly. The floor sloped downward, leading into a chamber so large our lights vanished into its darkness before touching the far walls. Something about the air here felt wrong, too warm, too humid, too alive. "Scanning," Vale murmured. The HUD lit with new data. Columns rose from the floor, wrapped in semi-translucent, pulsating sheaths. Some were as thin as a human arm. Others were thick as tree trunks. Their surfaces glimmered with bioluminescent currents, pale threads racing upward into the unseen ceiling. "What are those?" Sarah whispered. "Axial nodes," Vale said, awe and dread wrestling in his voice. "Primary nerve conduits, possibly parallel processing centers. This is the creature's spinal cathedral." Havel swallowed. "And the control region." Vale pointed to the far side of the chamber, to a massive structure rising from the floor like a pillar of dark glass, covered in branching fractal patterns. My stomach twisted when I recognized it. "Central nexus," I said. "The thing that's glowing red on Athena's heat maps." "Exactly," Vale said. "If this organism has anything like a brain, that is where its integration happens." "Distance?" Sarah asked. 60 meters, Vale said. "But the floor between us and it is moving." He was right. As our lights swept across the chamber floor, we saw it. A rippling, undulating, membrane stretched taut across the ground, quivering in patches, reflexively contracting in waves. Pools of fluid pulsed beneath it, creating circular bulges that rose and fell like the tops of lungs. It's a diaphragm, Vale whispered. Or something like one. A pumping structure, moving internal gases and fluids. Our path to the control nexus was across a breathing floor. Commander, Havel said, voice tight. The charges can stick to biological tissue just fine, but we need stable contact. That thing is moving too much. We adapt, I said. We always adapt. I stepped forward to the chamber threshold. The entire membrane reacted. A wave of contraction radiated outward from where my boot neared the edge, rapid and coordinated like a ripple through a network of muscles. The chamber's temperature ticked upward again. It sensed you, Vale breathed. It is mapping your weight, your heat, your intent. The last word made my skin crawl inside the suit. Rourke, Sarah said quietly. This thing knows we're here. It's known for a while, I replied. Question is whether it knows why. Another contraction tremored through the floor, stronger, and then the membrane tightened like drawn skin, snapping upward in places, forming ridges and depressions, shaping itself into channels, into paths, 4 paths, leading from where we stood to the central nexus. Sarah exhaled slowly. It's guiding us. No, Vale said. It is herding us, like a circulatory system rerouting blood cells. Havel's knuckles were white around the charge case. Commander, this is a bad idea. I am aware, I said. But the alternative was waiting for this thing to crush the vigilant like a toy. We follow the path, I said. No lateral steps. Stay on the elevated ridges where the membrane is thickest. Those will be the slowest to contract if it tries something. Good plan, Sarah said. Probably. We stepped onto the first ridge. The surface gave under our boots. Not totally, but enough to make every step feel unstable, like walking across a trampoline stretched over a deep pit. Bioluminescent pulses rippled under the membrane, traveling alongside us like veins lighting up in response to blood flow. Temperature up another 2 degrees, Havel said. It's speeding up its metabolism, Vale added. Preparing for something. Probably digestion, I thought. We reached the halfway point. My visor dimmed automatically as the bioluminescent currents flared brighter. More conduits awakened in the walls, crackling with pale blue light. They all converged toward the nexus. The creature was pouring energy into its brain. Then the ridges beneath us shuddered. Move! I shouted. We broke into a careful run. Not a sprint, because a sprint meant slipping, and slipping meant falling into the softer membrane between the ridges, where the creature's tissues were most active. The floor behind us collapsed downward, not fully, but enough to form a shallow valley, pulling fluid toward it. The membrane ahead of us hardened, rising slightly, closing the distance to the nexus. It's pushing us forward, Sarah said. Or pushing us into position, Vale replied. We neared the final stretch. The nexus rose before us, a massive column of semi-clear, hardened tissue, inside which dark shapes pulsed in coordinated patterns. Thick neural bundles fed into it from every direction. Havel stumbled to a stop. Commander, that's not just a node. What is it? Sarah asked. Vale answered in a small voice. A sensory aggregation organ. It is not only thinking through that structure, it is perceiving through it. It's watching us, I said. As if confirming, the bioluminescent currents within the nexus flared, then stabilized into a slow, deliberate pulse, almost like a heartbeat greeting us. We plant the charges, I said. Fast. Havel dropped to one knee and opened the case. I grabbed the first 2 charges, handed one to Sarah. Vale monitored the pressure fluctuations in the floor, calling out every spike. Left quadrant stiffening, he warned. Shift right by 0.5 meter. We did. The nexus loomed above us, humming faintly, a vibration that resonated through the boots into my bones. The structure wanted to move. It wanted to grow. It wanted to respond, but it was waiting for something. Havel placed the first charge against the base of the nexus, where neural conduits were densest. The magnetic clamps locked in place with a dull click. "Primed," he said. "Timer ready." Sarah slapped hers onto the opposite side. "One more." I moved to plant the third, and the membrane beneath us tensed. "Commander!" Vale shouted. The entire chamber inhaled. Everything expanded outward, walls, ceiling, floor, stretching in every direction. The temperature spiked. Fluid sprayed upward from vents in the membrane, atomized into a fine mist that glimmered in our lights. Then the exhale came, hard. A sudden contraction collapsed the ridges beneath our feet. The membrane buckled inward, dragging us down. "Hang on!" Sarah shouted. We dug our mag boots into the surface, but the force was too strong. We slid toward the center of the chamber, toward a circular depression forming like the pupil of an eye. The charges clamped to the nexus glowed faintly, their timers counting silently. "We're out of time," Havel yelled. "Retreat path is gone," Sarah said. The chamber exhaled again, and the floor opened beneath us. The floor opened like a muscle remembering how to swallow. One moment we were scrambling for purchase on the rippling membrane, the next we were dropping through it, the surface parting around us in concentric rings. My stomach lurched as weight vanished, then returned in strange directions as the organism's internal gravity flexed. We fell into a shaft lined with wet, flexing tissue. Suit lights spun across surfaces that seemed to lunge and retreat at once. Thin strands snapped against my visor, smearing clear fluid. The shaft narrowed, then widened, then kinked sideways as the creature's reflexes tried to decide whether to spit us out or drag us deeper. "Lines!" I shouted. Instinct had me firing my harness anchors. Micro-grapnels shot from my belt, sinking into the nearest bands of stiffer tissue. The fall checked abruptly, harness biting into my ribs. My spine screamed. Below, I heard Sarah grunt as her line caught. Havel's panicked gasp cut off with a sharp jerk. Vale's voice came as a strained whisper. "I am not built for this." The shaft flexed again, squeezing around us. "Status," I called. "Suspended," Sarah said through gritted teeth. "Not for long. This thing is clenching." "Alive," Havel croaked. "Charge case is wedged against my chest. If this thing crushes me, the explosives go with me." "Then we make sure it does not," I said. The walls pressed in. The creature was trying to push us further down, contracting in waves that rolled beneath our hands. Each pulse narrowed the shaft, pressing my arms against my sides, pinning my legs. The harness line vibrated under the strain. "The structure is behaving like an esophageal reflex," Vale said, voice thin. "It is trying to move us toward a lower cavity, toward processing." "Digestive?" Sarah asked. "Yes." The immediate danger clarified something in my mind. We were no longer simply intruders. We were food that had triggered the wrong reflex. "Vale," I said, "can this thing differentiate between prey and threat?" "I do not know," he said. "We might be both, or neither. The concept may not even apply." The shaft contracted again. My chest compressed. The suit's pressure readouts spiked. "We need to reverse the reflex," I said. "Make it spit us out." "By doing what?" Havel gasped. "Tasting bad?" The word hung, absurd and suddenly perfect. "Taste," I said. "It dropped the drone into a digestive pocket to test it. It will do the same with us if it thinks we are just mass. But if we hurt the right tissue..." "The control nexus above us," Vale murmured. "It is directly connected to this shaft. If we shock it, the reflex might invert." "We lost 2 of the charges there," Havel said. "One is still in my case. The other, I think it is still clipped to my harness." The shaft flexed again, tighter. Warning icons flashed in my HUD. Suit integrity was holding, but the margin shrank with each pulse. "How far are we below the nexus?" I asked. Vale twisted his helmet, forcing his head against the constricting wall to look upward. 10 meters, maybe 12. The neural bundles from it feed into this passage. We are inside its throat, under its brain. Close enough, I said. Havel, give me that spare. I cannot move, he said. Arm it here. Havel, I said, look at me. I could not see his eyes, but I imagined them. We are not dying pinned in a tube, I said. You hand me that charge, I climb, I stick it. We make this thing choke on us. Then we go home and file a very long report. He was silent for a beat. Then I felt something press against my hip. The blunt cylinder of the charge, pushed along the narrow gap between our bodies and the wall. Timer? He asked. 15 minutes, I said. Then we get spat out. Or we are just what is inside when it detonates. That is not comforting, Vale said. It is something, I replied. I thumbed the charge's arming stud to stand by and began to climb. There was no room for finesse. Every movement was a negotiation with the constricting tissue. I dug my mag boot soles into any thickened fold I could find, hauling myself upward, harness line groaning. The shaft squeezed, then eased in response, like it could not quite decide whether to help or hinder. Move, Commander, Sarah urged. This thing is going to close. I am moving, I said through clenched teeth. The walls rippled around my gloves, slick and resistant. My lights flickered across embedded structures, tiny nodules that flared in response to my touch like agitated cells. Signals flashed along the tissue, racing upward toward the nexus. It knew exactly what I was doing. Athena, I tried on reflex. Silence again. We were alone in its body, and it was listening to us with every square centimeter of tissue. The shaft opened slightly near the top, a transitional bulb where neural bundles thickened. Through the flexing surface above, I saw the faint glow of the nexus, shadows of its internal patterns moving like slow thoughts. I wedged myself into the narrowest point and pressed the charge against the column through the shaft wall. The magnetic clamps grabbed hard, fusing onto the dense internal structure beneath the tissue. Charge placed, I said. Havel, timer. His voice reached me, thin but firm. 15 minutes. Starting. Now. A soft chime in my HUD confirmed the countdown. The creature reacted immediately. A surge of bioluminescent activity raced from the nexus down through the shaft, like a neural scream. The tissue around us spasmed, then convulsed, trying to eject the foreign mass it could not quite pass. The pressure around my chest vanished. The shaft widened in a violent lurch, throwing me downward. I hit the wall, bounced, caught my harness line. "Hold on!" I shouted. The reflex had inverted. Instead of pulling us deeper, the shaft squeezed from below, forcing gas and fluid upward in a violent whole-body cough. We were the phlegm. The column of pressure hit from beneath like a piston. We rocketed upward through the shaft, propelled by a slug of biologically generated force. I tumbled, slammed into the side, then burst through the membrane at the chamber floor, landing hard on the ridged surface near the nexus. Sarah crashed beside me, rolling onto her back. Havel shot out next, spinning, charge case clutched like a lifeline. Vale came last, flung sideways into a cluster of axial nodes. The chamber roared around us. Not sound, not in the traditional sense. Every surface vibrated, every conduit flashed with overloaded signals. The creature was flailing internally, reflex loops misfiring as the charge embedded in its control nexus fed a steady, ominous hum into its core. "My legs are going to hate me later," Sarah groaned, pushing herself up. "But we are not paced. I call that a win." "Timer," I demanded. 13 minutes, Havel said. "That will be 13 minutes too long if we stay here," Vale said, hauling himself to his feet. "The organism is in neurological crisis. Its responses will only get more unpredictable." The ridges of the breathing floor reformed under our boots, bulging and collapsing in chaotic patterns. Fluid sprayed from fissures, stinging against our suits with traces of unknown chemistry. "Roots are gone," Havel said, spinning in place. "The path we came in on is collapsing." Then we make a new one, I said. The membrane between us and the corridor we'd used earlier thinned under the stress of the internal spasms. Cracks spread across its surface, tearing open to reveal the shaft we'd originally descended. "Move!" I ordered. We sprinted for the opening. The floor heaved, trying first to throw us backward, then to slam upward into our chests. My legs burned. My breath rasped loud in the helmet. We hit the shaft and clipped on our lines by instinct more than conscious thought. This time, the contractions worked with us, the throat reflex now in full reverse, hurling whatever it could upward in an attempt to clear the irritation. We rode the spasms like a catastrophic elevator. The shaft spat us into the organ-lined chamber we had first entered, only now it looked like the inside of a storm. Bulbs pulsed and shuddered, some collapsing inward as fluid burst from them. The air thickened with vapor. Surfaces that had been fossilized hours ago were now slick and soft. Decades of rehydration compressed into minutes. "Athena!" I shouted again. "Present!" came the reply. It felt like a hand grabbing mine in the dark. Her voice was distorted, but there. "I have limited channels," she continued. "The organism's internal fields are chaotic. You have 9 minutes before charge, detonation." 9, Havel muttered. "That is a very small number." "Can you guide us?" I asked. "Only crudely," Athena said. "Your previous entry route is shifting. However, the pressure gradients align with your desired direction. Follow the outflow." "Follow the breath," Vale translated. The chamber exhaled again, a gust of warm, moist air pushing toward the forward cavity. The creature was trying to clear the irritant choking its brain. Us. We staggered into the corridor, letting the internal wind propel us. The walls around us slicked with fresh fluid, making each step treacherous. "Mag boots to maximum," I said. Our soles clamped down harder, preventing outright falls but dragging against the surface. Muscles screamed as we fought to stay upright in the surging tide. Ahead, faint light appeared. Natural or not, we could not tell. The forward cavity. 6 minutes, Havel said. The corridor constricted once more, then widened as a full-body convulsion rolled through the organism. The surfaces near us crackled, fossil plates fracturing under the internal stress. We passed a fissure and glimpsed, through briefly exposed layers, the void of space beyond, a narrow slit of stars. "This thing is tearing itself," Sarah said. "Good," Vale replied. "Hurt organisms let go." We burst into the cavity. The shuttle hovered just beyond the now glistening lip, its lights piercing the exhaled mist. The ledge beneath our boots felt less like stone now, and more like thick skin stretched over hollow bone. "Athena," I said, "if you were ever going to be a miracle, now is the moment." "I have been waiting for a chance," she said. A docking line shot from the shuttle, clamping onto the ledge beside us. The ramp dropped 1/2 meter short of the surface, the shuttle's thrusters flaring against the creature's attempts to hold it in its distorting mouth. "Jump," Sarah said. We did. The gap was small, but the air's pressure shift made it feel longer. I landed hard on the ramp, skidding toward the shuttle's interior. Sarah crashed into the bulkhead beside me. Havel stumbled but kept hold of the charge case, though its contents now mattered only if these first ones failed. Vale fell to his knees, then dragged himself inside. "Everyone in," I gasped. "Seal it." The ramp retracted. The view through the forward port showed the cavity beginning to clench, its smooth tissues contracting inward like a fist closing. "Time?" I asked. 3 minutes, Havel whispered. "Athena," I said, "get us out." "Already moving," she replied. The shuttle's engines surged, shoving us backward. The creature's internal pressure fought back, air rushing past the hull like an invisible torrent. Then, with a sound that existed only in instruments and in the way the deck shuddered, the shuttle broke free. We shot out of the cavity like a seed expelled from a fruit. Behind us, the derelict's mouth snapped nearly shut, ridges grinding. Fissures burst along its surface as internal stresses ripped centuries of mineralization apart. "Transferring you to Main Bay," Athena said. 2 minutes to charge detonation. The Vigilant loomed ahead, small and fragile against the roiling, awakening bulk behind us. Yara's voice came over the link, tight with held breath. "Status, Rourke." "On approach," I said. "Charges placed in primary nexus. Countdown active." "Docking corridor open," she said. "Make it quick." The shuttle slid into the bay. The moment the clamps engaged, Athena disengaged the docking arms and fired the Vigilant's main engines at full burn. For a brief, terrifying instant, nothing seemed to happen. DS-7413's gravitational tug clung to us, enormous and possessive. Then the charges went off. We did not hear the explosions. We felt them. Space reflected the force as a complex shiver in the metrics Athena reported. A sudden blossom of energy at the creature's core that rippled outward in concentric waves. The derelict's internal lights flared, then stuttered. Neural conduits across its length flashed white-hot in our sensors, then went dark. The gravitational hold shattered as if someone had cut a rope. The Vigilant leapt forward under its own thrust, freed from the drag. Alarms flared and died as systems moved from red to yellow to green. On the forward display, DS-7413 convulsed in slow motion, its ridges buckled, plates shearing off. Vast plumes of gaseous matter vented from ruptured cavities, forming ghostly halos that caught starlight. For a moment, it seemed to curl in on itself, a mortally wounded animal folding around a sudden pain in its chest. Then it stopped. Not entirely, but enough. Internal heat maps dimmed. Metabolic readings plummeted. The enormous, half-fossil, half-living ship creature drifted, no longer pursuing, its nose turning away, momentum carrying it on a slightly altered course into deeper void. "It is not dead," Vale said quietly. "No," I agreed. On the bridge, nobody spoke. We watched it recede. The Authority would get our data. They would see the scans, the structural maps, the telemetry of the awakening. They would read my logs, my apologies, my insistence that no one should ever go near that thing again. They would weigh risk against reward, fear against curiosity. They would likely choose curiosity. Later, much later, after debriefings and containment protocols, and nights where I woke convinced I still felt the creatures breathing under my feet, Athena played me a fragment of the signal she had captured when the organism had first reached back through her systems. "It is safe to show you now," she said. "There is no active channel, only a recorded pattern." "What is it?" I asked. "A snapshot of the organism's sensory state," she said. "The closest analogy I can offer is taste." The data, translated into something my mind could grasp, was a pattern of focus. It was not language, not thought. It was an impression of 4 small, hot disturbances moving through a vast, cold volume. 4 concentrations of complexity, 4 anomalies, 4 flavors, us. "It was not just hungry," I said. "No," Athena replied. "It was curious." "Is that better?" I asked. "I am still deciding," she said. The Authority classified everything, of course. They wrapped the incident in layers of secrecy and code words, stamped DS-7413 as an object of extreme interest, quarantined the system on star charts with a thin, polite warning. Unofficially, they called it other names. I heard one whispered once in a corridor. The ossuary, as if it were a tomb we had discovered. They did not understand. It was not a tomb. It was a den. Some nights, when the ship is quiet and the stars outside look too much like watching eyes, I think about the shredding fossil plates and the fresh wet tissue beneath. I think about the way it tried to learn us through our AI, through our boots, through the neural bands. We taught it something in return. Pain. How we feel when we are nearly swallowed. What that tastes like. If you are hearing this recording, it means the quarantine failed. It means someone overruled fear with ambition and went back, or found another of its kind, or followed the altered vector we tracked as it slowly changed course after the blasts. Because it did change course. We did not chase it. We watched it turn, ever so slightly, toward a region of sparse stars, a stretch of black where no catalogued systems lay. It was not drifting blindly anymore. Something in there remembered direction. We woke it hungry. We taught it about us. And now, somewhere in the dark between galaxies, a colossal organism shaped like a derelict starship is moving with purpose again, carrying the ghost of our taste in its re-knitting nerves. If you find it, do not board. If you board, do not walk where it can feel you. If you walk, do not let it breathe. And if you feel the walls soften around you, if the air grows warm, if something wet begins to drip from the ceiling, remember this. You are not exploring a ruin. You are already between its teeth. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, or if it left you looking over your shoulder just a little, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps these long-form cosmic horror tales reach more people, and it truly helps the channel grow. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next journey into the dark. Thanks again for being here. And until the next transmission, stay safe out there.